Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. And here we are. It is the day after the trade deadlines are done with Major League Baseball. And many teams may feel, or some fans may feel, a little done. But Matt and I will talk about that today. Hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm like you. I could barely get much good sleep last night because there were so many changes made to so many different rosters. My head was still spinning by the time I hit the pillow.
I tell you, it's just completely insane. We had our forecast with the Rays, and Neander and friends decided to completely blow that even much, much larger than anything we conceived. I've been listening to some radio and some folks who are complaining and all upset about losing certain players. And remember, folks, this is baseball. This is part of it. I mean, are you still concerned about David Price? Are you still concerned about Kevin Kiermaier? Are you and Evan Longoria? Come on, this team has been great. It'll be continue to be great, and a lot of that comes from the decisions made in the front office.
Yeah, I think the one that I heard the most gripes about, and it's funny, Mark, because we watched his starts, and I was his biggest fan through all his starts. I believe in this guy. I think that he is going to be a really good starter down the road. It just has to tweak some things that the Rays just never could solidify. But when Taj Bradley was dealt, everybody lost their minds. It was like, what is this? How does this happen? But, just prior to that, they sent him to AAA and everybody was good. He needs more time. He can't handle the MLB. He's not refined. So it's one of those things where you got to give up something to get something. I did note on Blue Sky, though, that I think the Twins are the kryptonite when it comes to the Rays making trades at the deadline, because from Nelson Cruz for Joe Ryan and this one, a reliever like Jax, it's great, swing and miss guy. But a reliever for a starter, you don't see that very often.
No, and I think did we have more than Taj in that deal as well? Was there more than just him? It,
That deal, hang on, I'm trying to think.
well,
No, it's just one for one.
okay, and the guy we're getting, how much control time do we have with him?
We do have some control time. So I think there's 2 more years after this one. So that, if the Rays were ever to move on from Pete Fairbanks, or if they're looking for a swing and miss guy in the playoffs this year, even, let's say they make it, you know, Jax has the chance to be a closer. He was blocked in Minnesota by Duran, and a lot of people felt he was actually the better option between the two. So
Wow.
it tells you a lot about Jax. Like, he is elite in terms of getting the swing and miss, which the Rays need more of from the right side. They got it for a while from Eric Orst, but he's struggling right now. They had it from Manuel Rodriguez, who might be out for the year. So they went out and got it. If anything, in my opinion, when you look at that and hanging on to Pete, Brandon, and Yandy,
Yep.
it speaks to fans should be ecstatic because their front office said, you know what, we believe in this group and we're going for it. And that doesn't happen very often for the Rays. Their biggest weakness was catching, and I believe firmly that they've resolved it. Like, I really, really, really believe they've resolved it. Between Nick Fortes and, I mean, Mark, the Rays gave up three pieces for a
Yep.
catcher. Three pieces, right? For a guy that was blocked in Los Angeles and wasn't getting the credit he was due, right? And so that is filling like a gaping hole in the Rays organization and saying, you know what, we don't have to rush Dom Keegan this year. We can call on this more mature bat who can also play first base. And what happened last night, Mark? Jonathan
Oh,
Aranda, I
yeah,
play at first base, right?
it was Abbott and Costello, brother. Okay, who's on first?
And so now you're looking at it and you're like, you know what? Hunter Feduccia can play first base. He can step in and be that left-handed bat at first base. And so the Rays have really added some intriguing options here where originally I would have thought Tristan Gray would be the call-up, because I think when they dealt for him, they knew they were moving on from Cabby. I firmly believe that they were going to look for a move and that something was going to happen and that they wanted a more lefty-oriented bench for that role, right? So they brought in Tristan Gray. I think they'll probably bring him back today before the game. But dealing Caballero to a divisional rival
Hmm.
and one that so desperately needed more speed on their bench, I don't know about that one, Mark. That's
Yeah.
a tough one to kind of swallow, but I am a fan of Everson Pereira. I know he's a lot like Christopher Morel in a lot of ways, and people will, gravitate to actually matching the two up, and all peripherals point to them being very similar. The difference is that, in my opinion, Pereira is more willing to go the opposite field and take what he's given, whereas Morel tries to pull everything that he's handed. So I think in this case, because of where the Rays are playing, and where they play in general in the AL East, I think Pereira is a better fit, and he's younger, he's more controllable. I think he's hungry to get playing time, and whereas Morel has shown the continued decline since he had that big year with the Cubs. So, you know what? It's going to add pressure on Morel to perform, and if not, they'll replace him and switch him up. So I like the ads.
Looking back, I was surprised about a lot of what's happened. And Morel, I'll tell you right now, my hope for him is nowhere near what I would have had with Caballero. But probably it's not fair to compare the two, though, either. Now, I got to guess what? A couple of days ago, here we are sitting, and we're saying, if there's going to be any more trades, as you pointed out, we were looking at Pete, we were looking at Brandon Lowe, we were looking at Diaz, and saying, well, will we push all the poker chips in? And they kept those, but I did not anticipate the rest of those changes. And let's, if you don't mind, let's take a moment and look back at the game from yesterday. Whew, gosh, good gravy, man. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this team, and we have pulled 4 players from the game, 3 with injuries and 1 we sent over into the other dugout. I'm completely insane with this. And I was kidding, semi-interrupting you on the who's on first deal, because let's take a look at it. How did that work out yesterday? We had start out with Aranda there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then he got injured. What maybe mention something about that, because that just worries me to no end for him and for the team. And then, once he has to go up for injury, and we've got Brandon coming over to first, then let's see what else happened. Oh, that's right. Was it Junior? Junior that got injured? After that.
I saw Diaz.
Oh, Diaz, that's right. Diaz got injured, and I'll come back to that. Anyway, it goes. We saw a lot of movement around. And the funny thing was, we were talking a couple of days ago with Danny Jansen sitting in the dugout and saying, wouldn't it have been funny if Taylor Walls had to wind up catching? But what we actually round up with was a catcher actually working first base last night with Mr. Thaiss over there. So strange game, my friend. And again, it did not magnify my love for the Yankees at all.
No, but you know what? Like, the Rays have options. And this is the part where I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Is now that we know Aranda might be out 4 to 6 weeks ish, right? With that wrist issue. Hopefully it's not as severe and he can get the power back right away when he does return. So it's not the end of the world. He would still have more than a month before the playoffs. He can get back on track and be ready. The question is, you look at the minors and you say, do they bring in Trey Morgan? Now, Morgan's not Rule 5 eligible until 26. I think they're going to be very patient with him. They're going to keep him in AAA as long as possible, but I could be wrong because they're looking at pushing their chips in, like we've been saying. Yeah. So they're going to look for that best option. So Tristan Gray has a lot of time at first base. Brandon Lowe's had taste at first base. And in my opinion, that's the key right there is Brandon Lowe and Yandy Diaz share time at first base and DH. And they sort of swap back and forth between the two. That seems to be the most legitimate. So then what becomes important is that Ha-Seong Kim returns. He's been on the DL now I said DL. Oh, that's old school, Mark. IL.
For shame.
So he could return today if they want. I don't know what his back is like, but if he returns and fills in at second base, then suddenly you're okay. Or if Taylor Walls moves to second, etc. So the rest of the roster sort of plays around that. What I think might be a little bit disappointed at is that they didn't amp up the outfield right away, like with an MLB piece. Pereira they could call on. He is on the 40-man roster, so he can fill in if needed. And he might, at some point, they might say, you know what, Jake Mangum can go down. He can come up. And let's say they're facing a lot of lefties in a row, and they want to give him a taste and see what he's got. they may tap into that at some point. But when you look at the roster makeup, I think the immediate decisions that I'm waiting to hear is, does Matt Thaiss stay with the team, or does the guy who they traded 3 pieces for, and let's review that trade for a second, because these are not just willy-nilly, tiny little pieces. You're talking about Paul Gervasi, who was a 6 foot, what is he, 6'10" guy that they brought in from the Mets and they really liked. And I also like him. I think he's got a lot of potential as a reliever and even potentially as a starter, or maybe more multi-innings reliever. But then they traded also Ben Rortvedt, who doesn't really matter, but the guy that they got in the Reds trade, and he's one of those pieces that you can vision, dream on. He's a prospect. He's a pitching prospect, but he was the 10th best Reds prospect. So when you're looking at that deal, for a catcher, you're saying, okay, well, the Rays are usually pretty conservative with their pitching talents if they're top 10 worthy, right? So I think that opened up a lot of eyes, and a lot of people were down on saying, okay, well, Hunter's been blocked and hasn't come up to MLB. Well, why? I mean, that must mean he's not very good. And I was like, wait a minute. Does that mean that Brent Rucker shouldn't have been given a shot with the A's? Like, if you're going to play that game, you got to play it for everyone. And that's not very, conducive to making the best out of all your decisions. The Rays are going after this guy because he is a left-handed bat. He is a guy that will give you professional at-bats every single time he's out there. The only weakness he has as a catcher that I know of, I don't know how he calls games, but is the throwing tool. So he's not going to throw out a lot of base runners. With the Rays pitching being what it is, do you really need that? Have they ever had a gun behind the plate since Mike Zunino? No. Nick Fortes is about as close as they're going to get to that in the foreseeable future. And even Don Keegan and Kenny Piper and all the guys down the minors, they're not guns either. Like, there's no guns coming. So if that's what you're waiting on, you're going to be waiting for quite a while. The guys they just drafted in this draft might be the first ones to arrive that have a big gun behind the plate. So I like the Hunter addition because when we're talking about all these issues, Aranda being on IL, whoever else being gone, Cabaellero, reducing some of the options off the bench. Well, if your bats are able to produce in some of the traditionally weaker spots in the Rays lineup, which has always been, let's say you have Taylor Walls and Nick Fortes in the same lineup. Well, that's like having 2 pitchers in your lineup or close to it. So when all of a sudden you've got Hunter that's back there instead, that amps up your lineup to the point where it really takes the load off of Brandon Lowe having to carry your offense so much.
Yeah.
So I think the Hunter addition, Nick Fortes as well, improving the framing. Both of those guys are much better framers, and both of them are very good at the lower parts of the plate. They're in that, I can't remember. I think it's zones 16 to 18 or 16 to 19. They're very, very, very good at those framing. And so I think the pitching is going to be amped up in August and September, and that's going to help the Rays pitching really get some better calls in key situations and frustrate the other teams. So those are the 2 things that I think the Rays maximized in this trade deadline. And I really like the fact that all of them, except for Adrian Hauser, have 3+ years of control.
Right. So and the thing, you think about all the pitching changes, and all I can think is Kyle Snyder has to make that, and the new catchers make those batteries work. And one, they've got to gel. They got to build some communication there. And I'm obviously, I feel like Kyle has continuously done well with that, but this is a challenge, brother. You're a coach, and suddenly you've got these, and Chad Matoli, he's got to learn or maybe unlearn some of what these people are doing, the ones that are coming in. It's like, how much room do you give somebody? If they've already been successful, it's not a problem. Maybe you give them a little more room. I don't know. I don't envy any managers who sees this much activity. And then if we're going to talk a little further, how about Curtis Mead? There's a loss there.
Yeah, and Curtis Mead, I'm happy for him. I'm glad he's going to go get the playing time he deserves. He's worked so hard on his defensive capabilities. So whether it's at first, second, or third, he'll get a shot with the White Sox, and I think they're going to benefit from that. The Rays just couldn't lean on that many right-handed bats who were so vulnerable against right-handed pitching. And so between him and Johnny DeLuca and Caballero, and so they're doing exactly what I said that they should have been doing a long time ago, which is going more lefty heavy. And that's going to help them really compete 4 days out of 5 against the pitching in this league. And they need that. So Curtis Mead is he's worked so hard, and it'll be great to watch him as an X-ray, and I will cheer him on over the fence. But also they got in that deal, Mark, Duncan David, which I'm a big fan of as well. Remember we talked with the Double A manager, and I highlighted him as one of the guys who, and he said he's amped up his velocity, he's amped up his location, he's really put himself up as a attractive piece, and you can tell now because the White Sox targeted him that he really did put himself on the map in that front. So he's going to get a shot more than likely in the show, if not this year, next year for sure. But he'll be protected in the Rule 5 for them. So that's a huge thing for him. And Ben Peoples, who is he was a good starter in 24. I think they moved him to the pen late in 24, and then he's been in the pen ever since. He moved up really fast after that. A little bit of a smaller pitcher, but he's got the stuff to really, become a key cog in the middle of somebody's pen. So the White Sox did really well on this trade, maximizing a rental, really. But what I want to know, Mark, in this case, the Rays invested a lot, like a lot of years of control on Curtis Mead, a lot of years of control on Duncan David. They solved 2 Rule 5 decisions by dealing those guys and opened up another space with Mead. But what does it mean for them in the future with Hauser? Do they sign him to an extension of 1, 2, or 3 years? How much value do they see in having that veteran presence who's really found his best game now? Will they put dollar amounts to it?
I don't know, brother. I mean, I've seen the value in veterans. I mean, whether it be Nelson Cruz, whether it be Charlie Morton, even going to Denard Span to some degree. You look at those guys, and they give a sense of mentoring, if you will, for the guys who are in the clubhouse. And hopefully, we'll see that with him, the new guy as well. But
another key with that, though, Mark, just before you move on, if the Rays do make the playoffs, Rasmussen and Hauser as a 1-2, they're both sub-3 ERA guys. And so that, if McClanahan has issues and he's not able to return healthy, now you've got those 2 key cogs that get you through that wild card round and on to the next one, right? Like that, I think, is why they made that move. And that's why they were so heavily invested into Adrian Hauser. And he may have tried Zach Gallen, but just couldn't get there with the same package with the D-backs. And maybe they just trust Hauser more this year because he's outperformed Gallen. But the playoff angle is significant here, where if they think they have a chance and they're going to push for it, Hauser is one of your top 3 pitchers. It works.
Folks, take note because that's very important. I mean, what you talk about as far as bringing Hauser in and Drew being very impactful, and if we get to the playoffs, will be curious. I think those guys will follow meaning the Rays will follow your same mindset on that because we need some strength if we're going to get to that point, or I should say when we get to that point. Wow, looking across, I mentioned Charlie Morton as a mentor. Now he's seen some movement too. Another X-ray. I mean, he was with the Astros, and then he was moving on with us, and he was moving here and there, and finally was wound up. He went to the Braves, and then the Orioles, and now he gets to be with his old coach. Not with the Astros, but the old Astros coach, AJ Hinch with Detroit. So I'm looking forward to seeing him roll with this team that's doing so well, all in all. He's going to be something else. There's a great player, and I'm pulling for him. What can I tell you? Then the other thing is, well, what do you do with that hole with Uncle Charlie? You bring in a closer, another X-ray. And the Orioles have brought on, who else? Andrew Kittredge. It is a fun time, man. I mean, you look at across all this, Matt, and it's just, where are we seeing all the pieces play? Uh, Not a Ray, but you do your own research on this one. Carlos Correa. One of 11 pieces that moved out of the Minnesota Twins. This is a guy who's gone back to the Astros and not even holding his own position. But this guy, he has like about a $200 million plus contract with the Twins. I can only wonder how that transfers over to Astros, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season.
That deal had everything to do with the new owners, the coming in Minnesota and not having to deal with that, atrocious contract, really. So that's a boon for the Twins, who will now get the spin on a dime. They've got strong pitching, the starting pitching that they have, they can build on very quickly. So if they make a few key improvements on their lineup and their roster, next year, they could be back on track to kind of compete a little bit better. But yeah, they made some really crazy amounts of moves. I've never seen the team basically, I'm an Expos fan, so I've seen this from that angle. But that whole, yard sale, put the sign out, take whatever you can get thing. They probably would have traded Buxton if he allowed it, but he said, no, I'm sticking around. So yeah, but along with Correa, the Astros also added another X-ray, Jesus Sanchez, who the Rays had picked up as an international free agent for $400K way back when. And then they ended up moving him to the Marlins when they picked up Nick Anderson. So, he goes over to the Astros and could really improve their production in the outfield and give them a little bit more athleticism. But I thought they should have added a little bit of a bigger piece in the outfield, to be honest, than Jesus, because Jesus tends to be a free swinger. And in the playoffs, that doesn't usually turn out to be a great thing to have. Really like the Tigers moves that you were talking about. You bring in somebody like Charlie Morton. It honestly doesn't even matter how he performs on the mound. His presence in that room, on that bench, his calmness, his demeanor, everything that he has leadership-wise will just pour through that room and improve the Tigers' chances of making it far. Honestly, it was one of the best moves of the deadline, I think. It was just one of those, like, okay, it's not necessarily like they're adding an ace, but they're adding an ingredient to a playoff team, sort of like when you bring in that gritty guy or that big bat that can, like Jorge Soler or something like that can actually, pound the baseball when needed. Well, Charlie Morton is going to really help calm all those young guys. Tariq Skubal is going to be all over him like white on rice, and he's just going to be, able to right the ship if ever things get a little bit out of hand. I do want to talk to an inactive team, though, Mark.
Yes.
They're ahead of the Rays in the standings, but the Red Sox, what were they doing? Did somebody put Craig Breslow in a little safe down at the pier in Boston and say, don't open until after the trade deadline? Is that like, for a fan base that lost Rafael Devers this year and are outperforming expectations since, you would have thought that they would add to that and kind of say, you know what, we're able to throw some more money at this and see where it lands. No. They sat on their hands and they just basically said, you know what, we got what we got, and Alex will figure it out, and then we'll look at what's going on next year. But they honestly, if you're the Rays, you're much more encouraged as a player than the Red Sox players are right now, because your team, your front office, fixed a few of your cracks and had showed that they had faith in your players. Whereas the Red Sox, just I don't understand. Mark, I really don't get it.
I can't imagine, to be Alex Cora, what's that like right now. And you say, I have to have the tools. I've got to have the tools to build a winning season. Right now we're a couple of games, the Rays a couple of games shy of a flat season. But no, I don't know what they're going to do with their future with like that, to be quite honest with you, Matt. It's kind of scary. This whole season's gone crazy for me. I would have put the Orioles much higher. I would have put the Blue Jays much lower. And see, do you got anything on the Blue Jays with what they've done with the trades? Because it's just
the Jays, yeah, they sort of did, what you would call a flat performance. The only one that I think is really notable is Sir Anthony Dominguez. I think he's the one piece that really, helps improve their chances overall. They added Ty France, which is like a bench piece, and I don't think he moves the needle at all. If anything, he makes the roster more right-handed and goes against the grain on everything that I've been preaching. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe you should have went out and got a left-handed bat to replace I think on their entire roster, they have three who hit left-handed, and they have a switch hitter. So you've got four guys that can, out of 13 that can actually. So that means your game plan, if you're the other team, is very, very, very easy to come up with and attack hitters, in similar ways, for the most part. But yeah, I don't like their moves. I think, like the Red Sox, they have the money to go after bigger pieces. I think both of them probably did try for Joe Ryan or bigger pitching pieces, but fell flat for whatever reason. The only reason I give the Red Sox a pass is because I know their ownership gets in the way. But the Blue Jays, I can't see the ownership saying no after they invested so heavily in Vlad Guerrero.
Right.
Like, that's telling me, okay, well, they're in, right? Like, they're not just going to do that and then sit on their hands. So really, it falls on Shapiro and his group to explain after the season, if it goes badly again, why they didn't do more at the deadline.
Well, let's go back to the Rays. Let's take a quick look at who's coming, who's gone. Okay, so Zach Littell is out, and let's see, we brought in Adrian Hauser.
That's an improvement.
Yes. Taj Bradley's out, and Griffin Jax is coming on.
That's another improvement.
Yep. And let's see who else. Caballero's coming in. I forgot who we're getting a catcher. Who we're getting from the Yankees?
Herrera's an outfielder, so you've improved your outfield right-handed bat power, but you've reduced your speed.
And Danny Jansen's gone. And let's see.
Best trade of the Fortes is in.
Yeah.
So they went from a bottom five framer in all of Major League Baseball, maybe historically. And they added the top five in Nick Fortes. So
I'm looking forward to this new team, man. I mean, a lot of us, because we get familiarity and we love certain players, we see them out there doing certain things. And I'm, personally, yes, I will miss seeing Caballero out there with a Rays uniform on. And even Danny Jansen's been fun to watch. But I'm looking forward to this new team. I know the Rays. Whatever we may think as fans, they're building something good. And even if we don't see all of it this year, I think we'll see a better year than we had anticipated a week ago. So
right. And I just want to talk on Caballero quickly.
Please.
The Rays got him for Luke Raley, right? Way back when.
Yeah.
And he ended up filling that hole that Wander Franco created through his atrocities, right?
Thank you.
So that was great. That's great. And he's provided the Rays with a utility player, the likes of which they may not have had for a long time. I think probably since Zobrist, that can move around so freely all the way around. But when you look at just his offensive side of things, okay, Mark, this is a guy that hit 225. And every year since he came into Major League Baseball, he hit 221 with the Mariners, 227 with the Rays the first year, and 226 this year. So he's a 220 hitter. That's his, offensive ability, basically. He's maxed out, and he's 28. Right. So the Rays can't have so many of those guys. If you've got Taylor Walls and Jose Caballero on the same team, well, you're at some point you're wanting to up the game on that front and actually improve that. So this is the point where you say, okay, Ha-Seong Kim coming in and being that guy instead of Caballero, that's a huge improvement because he's going to be in the 260s and the 270s. He's got that ability to add, 50 points on that, and that's going to help the Rays lineup significantly. Caballero has never been a 2-WAR player. He's been 1.9 all the way through. So you look at Pereira and you're like, is he ever going to be a 2 or 3-WAR player? Maybe, maybe not. I can't say, but I do know the Rays couldn't carry so many of these guys that are at that, hovering near that Mendoza line, basically. So I wish him all the best. I do like Cabby a lot. I love the war paint, and I think he'll do well for the Yankees, especially as a speed guy off the bench. The Yankees had a very good trade deadline for what they had. I don't think they could throw other chips in, but I want to tip my cap to them because they spread the improvements around the roster in areas they need it, and I don't think it'll make them World Series contenders, but I think it'll make them harder to play against for sure.
There you go. Well, I tell you what, we had the episode that went up a couple of days ago, and we pretty much dashed that. Whether we were looking at Fairbanks, whether we look at Brandon Lowe, whether we were looking at Diaz, and just so many surprises. It's part of what baseball is about, right? Even into the 11th inning.
It hurt.
It did, man. It hurt so much. Just for grins and giggles, I renamed the last episode PTBNL, player to be named later, because let's face it, everything changed. And this one's called Who's New or Who's New? Or Who Knew? Maybe that'll be it. Anyway, enough of me going on and on. Matt, thanks for coming in here. You know, it's Friday around lunchtime, and we want to get this out, folks, because couldn't wait till next week to put an evaluation of this fun close to the MLB trade deadline this year. Any parting words, Matt? Any insights more you want to share?
I watched Yaniel Corret pitch last night, and I really love what he showed again. I think that he could be on his way up to AAA very shortly, and if not him, Ty Johnson has been just as impressive. He's the guy they got from the Paredes deal, and I think both of those guys now have opportunities to move up because of Ben Peoples and Duncan David being moved. So you've got to look at the upward, movement of some of these guys now that they've made some trades. I think that the decisions for the Rule 5 have become a little bit easier to manage. So you're looking at Dom Keegan and Carson Williams as being automatic, basically. But some of the other choices that they would have had to make, including David and Peoples, are made for them. So, the Rays are in a good place now. And I'm hoping they're going to LA after they meet the Dodgers at home. Like the craziest schedule, Mark. But at least then they stay on the West Coast. So what I will say is that they're facing the A's at the right time because they dealt Mason Miller. They don't have to contend with him. And sometimes your timing with some of these series is optimal. So the other thing that happened there is that when they brought in Adrian Hauser, it bumped Joe Boyle to the Angels series instead of the Dodgers series. So I think the Rays have a much better chance now against the Dodgers to do some damage. So hopefully Adrian Hauser looks better than Brian Baker in a Rays uniform, and we get to enjoy the revamped Rays and go on a run here in August and really, show them that the Rays made the right choice in sticking with some of their veterans. The last point I'll make is Brandon Lowe is now in his 8th year with the Rays. Looks like he probably start his 9th with the Rays, so almost a decade. And Yandy Diaz and Pete Fairbanks are in their 7th year with the Rays. Looks like they might start next year with the Rays as well. So anybody that speaks continuity with the Rays and gripes about it, please leave those comments at home now, because we've got 3 guys that can actually prove, once again, like KK and like Longo, who spent a decade with the team, that when they're the right pieces, the Rays will stick with them and keep them around for fans to enjoy. That's all I got.
Well, that's fantastic, Matt. Thank you again. And that is a good reminder. Also, I want to thank you because you keep top of mind for some of us who say, Ha-Seong Kim, oh, that's right, he's with us, or talking about some of the guys, the prospects that are coming up. And sometimes we forget that we still have, some really good guys who aren't out there just yet. So fun times ahead. Thanks, Matt. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. I hope you enjoyed all this popped up at the very end of the trade deadlines as much as we did. So thank you again for joining Matt and I here on Baseball Biz on Deck.
And just a reminder, if you enjoyed this show, go ahead, like and subscribe to Baseball Biz on Deck. Also, you can find Matt at matgermain.b Sky Social. That's Matt at matgermain.b Sky Social, or Mark at baseballbizondeck@gmail.com.